Last night, the Republican Party defied history for the midterm and midterm year. We also had a staggering number of House retirements. You had some that decided to, let's stay away. Let's stay away. I'm not sure that I should be happy or sad, but I feel just fine about it. Carlos Cubella, Mike Kaufman. Too bad, Mike. Mia Love gave me no love. And she lost. Barbara Comstock was another one. I mean, I think she could have won that race. Peter Roskam didn't want the embrace. Eric Paulson didn't want the embrace.
Whose fault is it that there were so many retirements?
In Jeff Flake's case, it's me, pure and simple. I retired him. I'm very proud of it. If the Republicans won, and let's say we held on by 2 or 1 or 3, it would have been very hard out of that many Republicans to ever even get support among Republicans. And the closer it is, the worse it is. I'll be honest. I thought it was a very close to complete victory. From a deal-making standpoint, we are all much better off the way it turned out.
So delusional. They lose a third of the seats in 2 years nationwide that Obama lost today. 333. The worst defeat for Republicans since Watergate. Like, this guy was so bad. He was so horrible, so toxic, that actually you'd have to go all the way back to Richard Nixon committing crimes and Republicans having to run under that scenario.
This took work.
Like, he had to work that hard to offend as many voters as he did. And you sit there and you just, he's not well. Yeah. I was worried about him yesterday. What? He just Willie, it was delusional to say that we did pretty well. And of course, then later he said, well, I'm kind of glad we lost.
Well, you know, even conservatives who support Donald Trump, I saw and heard from yesterday, were not just perplexed, but outraged by the fact that he's dumping on Republicans who lost. Like, that was his focus.
That's what he does.
Was pointing out the ones who lost for distancing themselves from him. And, you know, you just have to say, he looked like he was backed into a corner. Yeah. He looked uncomfortable. He was pacing around the stage at times.
Horrible.
Was he going to step off the stage? Where was he going? And he wouldn't stop. As Yamiche can tell you, she was in the room. It was 90 minutes of that.
Yeah.
He couldn't stop himself, and he was just so angry. But Rick, Willie's right. He was delusional. I just say that Republicans did pretty well when they just got absolutely trounced. I mean, the party's dead in the Northeast. It's dead in the Northeast. Again, you lose 333 seats in 2 years nationwide. You lose the governorships that are the most important to Trump for his reelection. It's just not good.
No, it's not good. And you know, people often ask me why I don't leave the Republican Party, and I won't use the trope that the Republican Party left me, but the truth is, Joe, that there is no Republican Party anymore. It's gone.
Right.
We now have the Trumpian Party, and there is a realignment going on, which makes all these things hard to predict. But there's no circumstance in which you could say the president did well. Now, parties often don't do well. The party of who has the White House, that's typical.
Right.
But let's just face it about the Senate. The Republicans won the lottery map, right, in the Senate. They just got a great. They got a great hand dealt to them.
By the way, we knew this 2 years ago.
Right. That was always going to happen. And the other thing you have to look at, if you look at the jobs numbers, you look at the stock market, which went crazy yesterday, and you look at the
Explain that really quickly. The market went
543 points, I think, went up. So
and they were
2.153%. The increase is a huge.
The markets were thrilled that Donald Trump has divided government now.
Right. Because as a conservative, I like the divided government because I don't think government is the answer to everything. So to me, sometimes when the government can't do anything, that's better than the alternative, right? So a lot of conservatives think that way. But when you have those kinds of numbers, jobs numbers, GDP growth, the market is done as well as it could be, the Republicans should have gained seats. Yeah. They didn't gain seats. They lost seats, and they lost the majority. And you can't point to any, I don't know what factor you'd point to other than Donald Trump. What would we say, why did the Democrats win and the Republicans lost so badly? What was the reason? Was it because of the jobs growth? No. Wage growth? No. Stock market?
There was no reason other than Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Right.
And the kind of press conferences that he held yesterday.
So what you just saw was delusion, and he was also combative yesterday. Here's combative.
You know, I keep hearing about investigations, fatigue, like almost from the time I announced I was going to run. They got nothing, zero. You know why? Because there is nothing. They can play that game, but we can play it better. Because we have a thing called the United States Senate. If that happens, then we're going to do the same thing, and government comes to a halt, and I would blame them. If they do that, then it's just all it is a warlike posture.
Would you consider removing Mr. Mueller from his position?
I could have ended it any time I wanted. I didn't. I could fire everybody right now, but I don't want to stop it because politically I don't like stopping it.
Your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood.
They're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN. All right. And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
I tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his butt.
Well, I'm not a big fan of yours either, so
I understand.
To be honest.
The rapper Little John has said you called him Uncle Tom. What's your response?
I don't know who Little John is. He
was on The Apprentice.
I don't know. Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Because you told her you have the highest approval among African Americans. It's just 8%, sir, single digits.
See, when you talk about division, it's people like this that cause division.
You called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists. Now people are also saying
I don't know why you'd say that. It's such a racist
there
question.
are some people.
No, why do I have my highest poll numbers ever with African Americans? Why do I have among the highest poll numbers with African Americans? I mean, why do I have my highest poll numbers? That's such a racist question. Honestly, I mean, I know you have it written down and you're going to tell me. Let me tell you, it's a racist question.
So, Yamiche, so this guy, his party gets destroyed, wiped out in the suburbs because of behavior just like this, because of his attacks against you and attacks against other members of the press. But he just keeps doubling down on this losing strategy that gutted the Republican Party on Tuesday. And did you feel like when you were in there, did you feel like Donald Trump wasn't really talking to you or Jim Acosta, that he was talking to his hardcore 33%? And it's almost like all of you were just sort of political props for him.
Well, I think that he was definitely feeling frustrated and angry at the fact that Republicans lost the House. I mean, this president, as much as he campaigned for Senate Republicans and was traveling and talking about that, he was pulling up on stage House Republicans. He was tweeting about House Republicans the day of the election. So he was also very invested in the House. So I think that he felt that loss very deeply, and as a result, he was angry about that. So I think that was going on. But I also think that there is this idea that President Trump separates himself from the Republican Party. He's almost saying Trump won, but the Republicans lost. The way that he was talking about those Republicans saying, hey, me a love, you didn't give me any love. He was being in entertainment, almost like laughing at the Republican Party, saying, well, my brand is going to be okay even if this party goes down in flames.
Yeah, but, when he started going through that mere love, you didn't give me love. So-and-so, you didn't embrace. Yeah. No embrace. You just sat there going, my God, he's not even good at this anymore. He's just embarrassing himself, not only on the national stage, but on the international stage. And there are consequences to that, but thank God there are also checks and balances in Washington.
It made me a little uncomfortable, I'll say. But, there was a really interesting tell in all this. Clearly, he is building not a political party, to Rick's point, but a cult. And in his world, the only currency is loyalty to Donald Trump. And the real tell, I thought, was when he was talking about what would happen if the House Democrats investigated him. And he said, the Senate will go after them. The Senate, a separate branch, from him. He assumes that every Senate Republican will do his bidding and run counter investigations against House Democrats.
He thinks it's his Senate.
Yes, of course.
He's such a fool.
It's his Senate, it's his Supreme Court, it's his White House, his Justice Department. Now, listen, I think to a certain degree, Republicans on the Hill have been subservient to him for 2 years. I don't know if it continues after the midterms. Maybe someone will say, well, maybe this doesn't work. But, you know, he has built not a political party. He has built a political machine that is circulating around his own personality. And if he thinks he can get the Senate to do his dirty work, then maybe it works.
Well, he also, if you look at the Republican statements yesterday after Whitaker was made acting attorney general, they again were not critical of President Trump. They were all, I look forward to working.
Well, they're deeply
with
petrified,
Whitaker.
right? I mean, they in their heads, they think the only chance to survival, and maybe it's because Trump has told them this, they think the only chance to survival is if they get his base out. Right. They should be looking 6 years down the road at what happens when he's no longer there.
Right.
Because then you don't have a party.
But you know, Willie, this is what we said 2 years ago. 2 years ago, said, if you sell your soul to Donald Trump in the primary, if you're in these suburban districts, you're going to lose the general election. We said that 2 years ago. Cory Gardner has to understand today, and all the other Republicans that are running 2 years from now have to know today, unless they're in states that Trump won by 20 points, and even Joe Manchin showed that sometimes that's not a guarantee. If you sell your soul to Donald Trump, you're going to lose the general election. They're going to have to figure out a better way to do it than these Republicans who were sycophants over the last 2 years, because guess what? They're going back to sweeping streets in, you know, Kansas.
There are places where it's safe to do, but those suburban districts, you're absolutely right, you're going to get swept out. We should also say we're not going to get sucked into the rabbit hole and the traps that the president sets, but the president of the United States took away a press credential yesterday from a CNN reporter for asking questions. There was no assault there, as the White House alleges took place. And to their credit, CNN actually didn't get mired in it. They did one report on it last night and focused on what we're talking about. But in the context of what we're talking about, Fox is going with it. It's near the top of their website. I'm sure they're talking about it on their morning show today.
Well, no,
they're along for the ride.
Because they're now going to probably say Jim Acosta has leprosy and smallpox. So if you let him into the White House.
Yeah.
What's that?
He's a cannibal also.
And also he's in a gang and he's from the Middle East. Well, he could be from the Middle East. I mean, I can't say he's not from the Middle East, can you? But you know what? Listen, this is very simple on the Acosta thing. All right? I mean, if I'm a news executive, if Acosta's not allowed in the room, my reporter doesn't go in the room. We try to overthink these things. This is really simple.
Well, who's Trump's foil then?
No, there's some history here. Fox News during the Obama era was blacklisted from asking questions. They were allowed in the room, but they never called on Fox News. What happened in that moment was the other anchors complained to the Obama press office. They said, Fox News is part of the White House Correspondents Association. You need to let them ask questions. This is a line you've crossed. Reverse it. The Obama administration reversed course. Fox News is now, of course, in the opposite position where they're programming what Trump wants them to program. And, you know, they need to step up and actually act like a member.
Well, you know what? What's going to be interesting is what's Fox post-election versus pre-election. I suspect we're going to see a dramatically different Fox News after the election, starting now. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.